Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or this evening, depending where you are. It's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you. Hi, hi, hi. I'm just going to wait for a few seconds for everybody to join us from the waiting room. I'm going to be talking to Shirley today for about 25 minutes. Then I'm going to come to the chat for your questions, and we'll try and get all of your questions answered from the chat. The foundation has set up a COVID relief fund in order to support thousands of union performers who are going through tough times. This year, thanks to your donations, the foundation has given nearly $7 million in emergency aid to more than 7,000 performers and their families. If you are a SAG-AFTRA performer and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Shirley Faison with the Carson-Adler Agency. Hello, Shirley. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Warm in LA.
Oh,
Yeah, how about you?
is it? It's kind of warm here today, fortunately. We've had some cold days, but it's warm here today.
And where are you?
I'm in Midtown Manhattan, New York.
Okay, great. And so are you working from the office, or are you still, because of the pandemic, are you working from home?
I'm still working from home. I go to the office to handle mail and things like that once a week, but basically I'm working from home.
Okay. And I'm wondering, what is the situation in terms of sort of production in New York now? It seems like maybe there's more film and television in New York than ever. Is that right?
Well, before the pandemic, we had, because of the tax breaks in New York, we had been getting television shows and film. And since then, there was a period of time when the pandemic first happened that things shut down. But things have opened back up as far as film and television. Everything's in full production. There's COVID. You have to take a COVID test before you can work. Some productions have had to shut down for 10 days because of COVID, but everything is, but then they go back up. Everything is up and running. And it looks like we may have theater back
Yeah.
towards the end of the year.
Yeah, that's very exciting news. And so how has the business changed for you over the last year?
There's been more and more and more self-taping. That's been, and I'd say that that's something that separates people, because if you're not able to do a self-tape, if you don't have good lighting, if you don't have a means for doing self-tapes, you're not in the game. Casting directors have resorted to self-tapes because of the pandemic.
Right. And so when your clients submit tapes, do you have somebody else in the office who watches them, or do you randomly, occasionally watch them? How often do you watch your clients' submissions?
The way that self-taping works with casting is that it generally comes through breakdown services. They'll request an EcoCast, or they may ask us to upload it to Casted Talent. And so I look at all the tapes that my clients do. And then if I feel that they need to retape, then I can tell them, you need to retape it, and then they retape it. And that's how we work.
Yeah, that's great. So you have a very close connection with your clients.
Yeah.
How many clients are on your roster?
I'd say about 200, 250 maybe. But you have to realize we represent from children through adults. So we have all ages.
And so I'd love to get into some of the nitty gritty with you about, your expectations for your clients and their materials. So we've talked a little bit about self-taping, and I'd love to get into that more later. But for your clients, can we talk about clips and reels? What do you like them to have?
Okay. So the way that breakdown services work, I took a workshop at Breakdown Services several years ago, And what they said was that if a person has a slate shot and a reel and their photo and resume, as the submissions go, that goes to the top of the submission for your agency. So um, and then if they only have one, then it's the next layer. And then if they have nothing, then it's the bottom layer. So depending on how many people you submit for a role, if they don't have a slate shot and and clips from their reel, um, it, um, it may not be on the top of the submission. I mean, I have no authority on whose material gets on the top of the submission, you know.
But that should be a basic for everybody, given those circumstances. A slate, clip, reel. Can you give me any advice about headshots? Do you have anything that you think is a universal truth when it comes to headshots?
Yeah, I think it's important that your headshot looks like you. And so that you don't get it retouched too much. I mean, like if you have a pimple that day, then of course get it taken off if you don't generally have that pimple. But I noticed that, you know, a headshot may come in and I'm interested in seeing the person and setting up a meeting with the person, and then the person comes in and they look nothing like their picture. They've retouched the lines out their face, and you know, a lot of times the lines in your face are important, you know, depending on the character. So you don't have to, you know, like make, you know, you don't have to make yourself look different. It's important that your headshot looks like you. The other thing is, I was looking at a student's headshot. I was looking at a college showcase, and one of the students, her headshot was her clothes were so busy that I was noticing her dress instead of her face. So so it's important that that your clothing complement who you are, as opposed to distract from who you are.
Yeah, that's great advice. So somebody has asked about reels. If they don't have a reel, because we were just saying, you know, you should have all of this stuff. What to do if they don't have a reel? How do you feel? You know, some actors tape monologues or scenes with friends if they don't have anything on their reel. What do you advise for actors who maybe don't have the credits to create a reel?
You know, that's you know, half a dozen in one hand and half a dozen in the other. Number one, if you're going to put something up, it needs to be of quality. And even if you have scenes from work that you've done, if it's not of quality, then it's not worth putting it up. It'll work against you as opposed to working for you. So if in fact you and a friend can do a scene and it looks professional, then it's probably okay. But you know what? From agent to agent to casting director to casting director, everybody has a different point of view about that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So somebody in the chat is asking whether or not you're accepting new clients, and if so, what's the best way to submit to you?
Okay. Right now, because of the pandemic, I'm not so keen on accepting new clients until we open back up more. But that's not like set in stone. But so you know, I am accepting pictures and resumes, and if but I'm not like expanding my client list until after the industry, until after the industry opens up a little bit more. The best way, I used to tell people to email me, but I'm getting so inundated with emails that I would prefer the old-fashioned way of sending in your headshot if you can, and or sending in a postcard if you don't want to send in a headshot with basically if you've worked on something recently, letting me know what that is, etc. if you don't want to send a picture and resume, a regular one.
That's good to know. So other than, I'm sure that most actors would put some kind of submission package together for you with a list of recent credits, postcards, headshots, maybe sending you their reel or video or some sort of link to a website. For you, when you are contemplating taking on new clients, what do you need to know about your clients? What is important to you about what they have?
Well, you know what? It's really interesting. That's a very good question because, I'm always interested in talent, but there's so many agents that I have to be able to work with the person. So I'm interested in them as a person and whether or not our personalities are going to work, because it's a relationship really. So it's important that that they're interesting, and that the conversation isn't always going to. Okay, I'll give you a great example. In 2011, my sister passed away, and so I had to. I had to work, but I had to also plan my sister's funeral. And an actor called me up and I said, I really can't talk right now because, my sister passed away and I'm trying to handle my sister's funeral. And it's like it went right over their head and they just continued to talk to me. And so I think it's important that a person has compassion as an actor, and that they're listening to what's going on in a person's, like, if I say I can't talk and the reason why I can't talk is because of this, then accept that. I lost a few clients at that time, but I felt like, I didn't need to have them as clients, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So we're sorry that happened to you. There are a few people, actors in the chat, saying sorry that happened to you. But that's a brilliant example of what you're talking, you're looking for good human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so can you also tell me a bit more about your relationship with your clients and maybe your communication style? How often do you talk to them? Or when is it appropriate for them to call you or email you?
Mm-hmm. The relationship with each client is different, I'd say. Like some clients like to communicate all the time, and some clients only like to communicate when they have an audition or a booking. I think that the client is the one that kind of drives the relationship as a and sets how they would like to work with me. Some people, call quite a bit, and some people only call when they have something to say, but it depends on the client. I'd say that I have a different relationship with each client. Like I spoke to a client today that I hadn't spoken to. I called him regarding a booking, but I hadn't spoken to him. I emailed him, but I hadn't spoken to him in like 5 months.
Yeah, interesting. I mentioned this to you earlier. An actress told me, and I thought it was an interesting question. An actress confided in me earlier this week that she felt uncomfortable saying no to some auditions, that if auditions came through and she thought she could do something really interesting and be fantastic, that was great. Even if she thought she wasn't right for the role, but she could go in and do a good job and maybe book the room. If not this particular job, she'd feel good about that too. But she said that she got some other stuff from her agent that she just felt wasn't right and she wasn't going to do a good job, but she felt like she didn't have a relationship with her agent where she could say, no, this isn't right for me. I'm not going to audition for this. So how do you feel about that sort of situation, and what would happen if one of your clients said that to you?
I accept, okay, there's levels to that. If I feel that a client is right for something and they don't think they're right for it, then I'll have a conversation with them as to why I think they're right and why they don't think they're right. And after we have the conversation, either I think they're not right or they think they're right. Okay. But then there's also integrity and what a person is willing to do and what a person is not willing to do. So if a person, like a whole issue is nudity and sex scenes, if a person is not willing to do that, then of course I'm not going to ask them to do that because that's not something that they're interested in doing. Yeah. And or if a person because of religious reasons will not do something, then I then I won't ask them to do it either. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Jacqueline Levy is asking whether or not you represent only actors in New York or if you represent actors in LA and all over the country.
Okay. I represent actors all over the country. And it's easier now that they're mostly it's self-tape. Now, where it becomes a little tricky is if, in fact, the casting says it has to be a local hire. So if it's a New York project and you live in Nevada and they want a local hire, then I'm not going to submit you for it. But if in fact you can live anywhere, I mean, I have clients in Georgia. I booked a Broadway show, and the little girl lived in Seattle, you know, and so producers are willing to make accommodations for people who live in other states if it's not necessary for them to be a local hire.
Yeah, that's great. I want to talk to you a little bit about your book because you wrote a very uplifting, motivational workbook for actors. So I'm wondering if you can share some wisdom with the audience who may not have read your book.
Okay. So my book is 7 Rules to Thrive as a Performer, and basically it's a workbook, and it's more of, it's not a how-to book. It's more of a book that allows you to create the mood and the space and the mindset to be a performer. And you don't necessarily have to be an actor, but I wrote it with actors in mind, but it's however you choose to perform. Like one of the 7 rules is knowing that fear is false evidence appearing real. And a lot of times, we stop ourselves because of fear. And if you know that fear is just false evidence appearing real, then you're able to break it down and push through. And with the workbook, with each section, there are questions and you answer the question. So one of the questions before the rules are, what is your gift? And then you're able to write down your gift. Another piece in the book, you have to put a picture of yourself so that, who's your greatest competition? It's yourself, things like that.
That's great. Ronnie Ashery is, and I apologize if I mispronounce any names. Ronnie is asking what you look for on a resume. Is there specific training you look for? Are there certain acting teachers in LA who you admire?
When I look at a resume, it's really interesting because when I look at a resume, I generally can notice what the fat is on it, you know. If you say that you're SAG eligible, or if you say that you're SAG, and then I look at the projects that you did, then I can tell, you know, I, doing it for so long, you can sort of tell, what was actually professional work and what wasn't professional work. So I look at that. And also, I kind of stay abreast of what's happening in the industry. And particularly the theater in New York. Like, I'm familiar with a lot of the regional theater, a lot of the smaller theaters in New York as well. And so if you have something on your resume that I know that theater didn't do, and you're sort of stretching your resume, then I like to watch movies. And then if you say that you were in a particular movie that I've watched, and it's like, that character wasn't in that movie, they must have been an extra. So I look at those things. But then the other thing that I look at are your special skills, the things that you can do besides acting, or singing or dancing. If you can, if you're an equestrian, if you if you can, if you know how to use firearms, um, if you know how to double dutch, if just special skills. Because I think that a lot of times, I always say this, you get in where you fit in, and that special skill may be the thing that will get you the job. It will definitely be the thing, that special skill will be the thing that gets you Taft-Hartley, because basically they're saying there's no one else that can do it except you. So your special skills are very, 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 very important.
Great. Sierra Scott says that she recognizes that, it's not part of the general workflow to get feedback from casting directors because you're so busy and they're so busy. But she's wondering if you ever do get feedback from casting directors for your actors.
It depends on the casting director. Some casting directors have told me that they don't like to give feedback because if when you give some actors aren't able to accept the feedback. So if you give them feedback, then there's all these problems with with giving feedback. Now, if a person, so on a basic audition, I may not get feedback, but if a person gets a call back and it gets to be really, really close, between them and some other person or a group of people, then I will ask for feedback, so that I can, give constructive feedback to my client.
That's great. And we were talking a little bit about resumes. Maria Monroe asked if you have any advice for actors who are returning to the business who may have taken time out for one reason or another. What advice do you give to those returning actors?
That's a good question. And you say that when you want time to answer. I'd say, if you have a gap in your credits, like take for example, you're getting back in 15 years later, you may want to put a little note on your resume that like if you were 15 years a lawyer or something like that, or 15 years a homemaker or something like that, then you may want to put that, like that little note on your resume to kind of justify the gap, because people will notice the gap in your resume.
And sort of conversely, we have a question from Sal Morales, who is a TV reporter in Miami and is really just getting started. So he's done some under 5 stuff. And so the question is really for those people who are just getting started or transitioning from something similar, any advice for those actors who are just getting started, new talent?
Don't give up. I mean, it's okay. Be willing to accept rejection, because this is a business of rejection. And if you're going to get your feelings hurt, if you don't get a part, then it's not the business for you. So if you're just getting started, just be clear that it may not come easy, and be in it for the long haul.
P. Coranteng has a question about, do you believe that who represents you affects whether or not an actor will be seen?
My first answer is I hope not. I've been doing this for a long time, and so I think that it's important to develop relationships with casting directors and positive relationships with casting directors. So, yeah, I mean, to answer that question, I don't know. I would hope not. I'm able to get, to some people, it's easy for me to get them appointments, and some people it's not easy for me to get them appointments, and it's a diverse group of casting directors. So I can't say that there's a casting director that does not call me. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of casting directors tell us that if your agent is prepared to pitch you or stick their neck out for you or suggest that there's a reason that you are perfect for this job, they will see the client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Anastasia is asking about, and a couple of people in the chat have asked about social media and what that means for representation. Aside from people's headshots and resumes, do you look at their social media or their social media following when you decide whether or not to represent them?
Sometimes I don't have to look at their social media in order to represent them. But sometimes I look at their social media. I might look to see what they've posted before and whether, hey, actors, you guys are strange sometimes, to be honest. Like, you may have representation and you're thinking about moving to another representative, but you're not going to tell the new person that you had somebody. But then I'll look at your resume and I'll see that you have worked. And it's like, well, how did they get those jobs? So I may look at your social media to see whether or not you had another agent. And then I may call the other agent, because it's a, even though there's a lot of us, it's a small community. So I might look at somebody's social media regarding that. I may look at if they're a singer or dancer, I may look at their website to see what kind of clips they have on there and they're dancing. But so make sure that if you do put on your website, you're singing and dancing, that it's actually something that you're proud of, that someone would say, oh yeah, I want to represent them because they sing really wonderfully or that they dance really wonderfully. I don't really look at Twitter, and and I know some people do, but I don't necessarily look at how many Twitter followers you have or how many, or whether you're on Instagram and you know all that. I generally don't look at people's Twitter and Instagram accounts, but I may look at their website.
That's good to know. Thank you. Keely Derwin is asking a question about IMDb. If you have done a job and it doesn't appear on IMDb, you're legitimately in the film or television show, but somehow your credit is not on IMDb. What do you advise your actors to do? Presumably
IMDb Pro. If you're on IMDb Pro, then you can upload your credit, and then IMDb will verify it and actually add the credit. You can't do it on the regular IMDb website. I mean, you have to pay, and you can pay for a month, and then not, you can do it on a monthly basis. So you can pay for the month and upload your credit, and then, cancel the subscription.
Thank you. Nicole Henry is asking, would you recommend that your New York clients have separate agents in Atlanta or Chicago, or do you represent your clients in those markets as well for film and television?
But where does the person live?
I'm not sure where she is, but she's asking about your New York clients. Maybe she's a New Yorker. Yeah. If you recommend that they have separate agents in the smaller markets.
So in the smaller markets, if you're in Atlanta and if you're in New York and there's a series regular or a major guest star role in one of those other markets, it's going to come out in breakdowns in New York or LA. But if you want to do local hire stuff for Atlanta or Chicago, then I'm not necessarily going to get it. So you may want to have an agent in Atlanta or Chicago for that.
That makes sense. And Abra Bigham is asking whether or not you represent voiceover artists.
No, I don't. Not unless the voiceover is in a movie or, like that kind of deal. I don't represent regular commercial voiceover, no.
Got it. I love this question from Akida Abrams. What is your favorite part of your job, and what is a career highlight of yours?
Okay. I have a few career highlights. The favorite part of my job is it's telling somebody that they booked. That's the number one favorite. And the second fun favorite is negotiating the contract. I just have so much fun negotiating contract. I sort of giggle to myself. One highlight is when a person does a job and it's their first job, and they get their union status, whether it's equity or SAG-AFTRA. That's a highlight, particularly for adult actors. It's easier with kids. And then I have a few highlights. I remember, this isn't a SAG highlight; it's an equity highlight. I remember taking on a client, and when I heard her sing, I was like, "Oh, this is a no-brainer." And then this is several years ago, and she became a swing for The Color Purple, and she was swinging 10 roles in The Color Purple. Like, she might do the first act one role, the second act another role. But she was also swinging Celie and Nettie. So when LaChance decided to leave and go on to something else, my client said, I really would like to be Celie in The Color Purple. Now, she was very valuable as a swing because she was swinging 10 roles.
Right.
So I called the producers and I said, I really would like for her to have a shot in doing Celie. So they gave her a shot, and she booked Celie. And before Fantasia did it. So she did Celie on Broadway before Fantasia, and then she opened the tour in Chicago. So she did a sit down in Chicago, and that was so wonderful because it shows that you can be a swing or you can be an understudy and actually become the lead in a Broadway show. And then another one, I worked on a student film that an NYU student did. And I had the two leads and this is relatively recently, I had the two leads in the student film, and then Spike Lee decided to produce it as a feature. So I had the two leads in the feature film. And so that was another highlight. And I have many more, but those are the two
That's fantastic. Those stories of success are always uplifting. Thank you for sharing. I imagine because you're in Manhattan and you represent theatre actors that you go to, pre-pandemic, you would go to the theatre a lot. Do you often find new talent when you're going to see shows?
Yes, yes. But most times the principal for performers are already represented, unless I go to a an off Broadway show or an off Broadway show, I may pick up clients there. I like to go to. I also like to go to college showcases um, and meet, people as they're coming out of school. Yeah.
That's great. And then, so that sort of dovetails with a question we have here from Anna, who says that she creates, develops, and performs solo shows, a one-person performance, one person. And she's asking if there are specific agents who represent one-person shows, solo artists. Is that something that you have any experience with, or?
Before I became an agent, I was a producer. So in that vein, yes. But as an agent, I haven't necessarily represented someone with a solo show. Although I think it's a good vehicle for people to see, to experience your work. So some of my clients actually put together solo shows.
Okay, that's great advice. Thank you. Brian W. is asking, is improv important? And is improving a scene on a reel okay? I think we sort of touched on that earlier with reels. But yeah, do you like to see improv?
I think improv is very important. I mean, if a person has, if they took classes at UCB, I looked twice. Because I think that they're particularly with the comedic genre, a lot of times they want people who are able to improv. So I think I think it's good to have improvisation under your belt. If you have, well, I said what I said about reels.
Yeah. So Marsha and Anna, a couple of people in the chat are asking if you have any specific acting teachers, coaches in New York who you admire.
I don't recommend acting teachers.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of good ones, but I don't push any particular one.
Yeah, understood. I'm interested. You mentioned that the business had changed for you in the last year. I'm just wondering, what are the silver linings for you? What are the efficiencies that have come out of your work process over the last year that you hope will continue?
Mm-hmm. It's been a rough year, to be honest with you. Well, I hope that self-tapes continue, and I hope that people learn how to actually work with self-tapes efficiently. It's good to have a good ring light. It's good to make sure that your lighting is good. It's good to have a good backdrop if you're doing a scene. So that I think because there's so many self-tapes, more people are able to have auditions. It's not before there was a finite number of slots. And I think if casting directors have people doing self-tapes, they can see more people. So I hope that continues. There's more and more email, and I do like to talk on the phone a bit. So I hope that we get back to talking on the phone. Yeah. And you see, most people are working from home, and with some people it may be difficult to do the talking on the phone. But I would like for that to come back. And I would like for the industry to open up a bit more. I mean, it's been a rough year for actors, I think, trying to figure out things to do to keep their craft going.
Yeah, I think particularly in New York with the loss of theatre, but in LA as well, but you're in the middle of
Yeah.
Manhattan. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Patricia White is asking whether or not it's hard to represent actors with disabilities, and also maybe with disabilities that aren't visible, where you might have to negotiate something for them. Is that hard?
No, no. We represent several people with disabilities, and you have to be an advocate as an agent.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Okay, so I'm just going through the chat. Accents. Do you have any advice for actors with accents? Should they, if they have a natural accent, should they use the accent they're auditioning in throughout the audition, or should they speak in their natural accent and then perform their piece in the accent that's required?
Oh, that's a well, I think that a person should, if it requires a regional accent, that they should come in the room and talk in their natural accent, and then when they do the sides, do it in whatever regional accent that it is, whether it's but if you're coming in the room and you have to do, and you don't have time to talk, then do the accent that's required for the scene, and then talk with your natural accent after you finish. But if you get a chance to talk when you first come into the room, then talk in your natural accent, and then yeah.
Stephanie Ittelson is asking, do you take on new clients who already have managers? And, if they want to keep the manager they already have, and can you talk a little bit about your relationship with your clients' managers? When they have managers, what is your relationship like with the client's manager? How does that work?
I do work with people who have managers. I do work with people who have managers, and it depends on the relationship that the manager wants to have. So that most times, like take for example, if there's an audition, I'd prefer to tell the client about the audition as opposed to playing telephone and telling the manager, and then the manager tells the client. But if the manager feels that they want to have that where they speak to their clients, then I do it that way as well. But as far as take for example, if it comes through breakdown service and it's an EcoCast, then I will send the talent the EcoCast, and then I'll follow up by sending an email or calling the manager and telling them that I sent their client an EcoCast, and to follow up with them so that the talent is getting the information, the direct information. Yeah.
That's great. Carla has a great question. She said, clips of your work are often hard to obtain from the production company. Do you have any advice for your actors about how to get those clips?
Generally, people have been able to get them from the production company. The other way might be illegal, but you videotape it and then
yeah, if you can't get it.
Yeah.
And it's just for your tape, private use.
Yeah.
We don't know whether or not that's illegal. So Miss Dolly Turner is asking, is it about representation for older actors? Are you seeing more work for older actors, more diverse scripts in that regard?
Yes, I was looking at submissions today before this, and there were so many things for people over 55, people in their 60s. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot more.
Okay, that's great news, I think. Gillian Clare is asking whether or not you work with filmmakers who are building their careers, maybe actor, content creators who are building their careers. How do you feel about working with those content creators to help them build?
Well, as I said, I do student films and short films. Uh, I think short films are a good way to sort of get into the the business, and to sort of it's a good way to develop your reel, um, and it's the student films, the short films, and also there's a lot of webisodes that new people are creating the content for. It's a good way to build your reel. So yes, I do work on those things.
So there's a question in the chat here from Maria about interviewing with agents. So we had an agent earlier this week tell us that if he is calling someone in for an interview, he's looked at all of their materials and he's interested in representing them. That's why they're having an interview. So Maria's question is, do you have any advice for actors once they get to that step where they are interviewing with an agent for representation?
Okay. So what you have to realize is that the agent is working for you. You're not working for the agent. So make sure when you get to the point that you have an interview with an agent, you're also interviewing the agent to make sure that you can have a workable relationship with them.
Yeah. And so what do you think are good questions that you mentioned earlier that you love the negotiation. So of course, I'm sure you want an agent who's a great negotiator. So do you have any advice about good questions to ask agents in those interviews?
Ask them if they like to negotiate contracts. Ask them. There was a question that you asked me about the milestones. That's a good question. A question that I think is a good question is also how the actor, how the agent sees the actor. What kind of roles do they think that the actor is right for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great information to have. Okay, I'm just running through. There are a few questions about whether or not you should keep the credits on your resume current, or if it's okay to keep older credits on your resume if you don't have anything else.
I think that you want to keep credits on your resume that are good credits, whether they're old or whether they're new. Make sure you keep your good credits on there. I think that it's important to have what you're proud of on your resume as well. I mean, it's like if your resume, if you've been working for 50 years as an actor, I don't think you need to have every credit on your resume, but you should have your current credits and you should have credits that you're proud of that are great credits on it.
And if you're starting out, it's okay to have those student film credits,
Yeah, I mean, as long as you really did it, yeah, I think it's important. I mean, if you're just starting out, then you're just starting out, you know, and so you want to build your resume. So you put on there what you've done. Um, and if you haven't done anything, then you're going to put your training on there and your special skills.
That's great. Richarda Abrams is asking if you ever meet actors and have them do a monologue for you. And if so, what kind of monologue audition material do you prefer? A drama, something classical, comedy?
I think it's important to have contrasting monologues on your belt. I mean, I very seldom ask people to do monologues, but if I've had a person do a script and then I'm still not quite sure, then I'll ask them to do a monologue. Um, and you should have two kinds, a comedic and a dramatic, and they should be contrasting. The reason why I don't generally ask people to do monologues first is because you can work on a monologue for 15 years. And, you know, whereas if I give you a cold reading and give you a few minutes or 15 minutes to look at it, I can see what you actually can do with it.
That's great. So Shirley, we're getting close to the end of our time. So I'd love to finish with asking you if you have any just sort of best advice for actors. I know you said earlier, you talked earlier about perseverance. Do you have any other advice for people who are getting started or who are just hanging in there?
Yeah, you know, if acting is your passion, I mean, if it's your passion, then by all means, go for it. You know, you got one life, and it's important to be fulfilled. And if acting is what fulfills you, then go for it. And you know, people are going to say you're not right for this or you're not right for that, but if you develop your own content and do that one person show and put yourself out there. It's important to put yourself out there. A lot of times, we don't do that. You know, we'll have a reason why we can't do it. And I always say that, you know, if you say, oh, I don't want to be pushy, if you say you don't want to be pushy, then I guarantee you're not pushy. It's the people who don't care whether they're pushy or not that are pushy. If you say, oh, I don't want to be pushy, I guarantee you are not pushy.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time, your energy, your wisdom with us today, Shirley. We really appreciate all of your great advice. We're going to give you a big round of applause here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And thank you to everybody for joining us and your brilliant questions in the chat. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.